Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 66 for Monday, February 9th. My name is Farbod Merkazi. Jace Hatfield will be joining us in just a few moments, so make sure you hang tight for that. We have so much to talk about today. We're going to talk, we're ranging from Deion to Owen Heinecke to Trinidad Chambliss to Pete Nakos' recent article talking about all the weird inside recruiting stuff that happened between GMs and recruits throughout the season. I mean, it's bonkers. I was trying to figure out what I needed to put together for this show and how to describe it. And normally we have bullet points and really have the details, the most important stuff ready to discuss on our doc. I just copy and pasted a lot of the article. There's so much of it that we need to talk about, so we'll get into that. It's Super Bowl Sunday, and this isn't an NFL show, but today is one of those days that, honestly, one of my favorite parts from a college football lens of Super Bowl Sunday. Look, I'm an NFL fan. I love NFL football. I love watching that, but that's not this show, and that's not our biggest sport that we want to talk about constantly on this show. But one of my favorite parts of Super Bowl Sunday, or the lead up to it, is the college discussion of who has the most players in the Super Bowl. And a lot of times it's either people like trying to fight and argue about, well, my school has more players, my school really develops pros, and you come here, this is the NFL team. I mean, Bill Belichick last year was trying to say that North Carolina was going to be the 33rd NFL team because you go there and you're going to learn what it takes to become a pro and blah, 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 blah. But it's either like that whole divisive fighting who has supremacy on this, but I've also seen it in cases of like just a source of pride for programs of how many players do I have in the big game this year. And I mean, Alabama leads the way this year, not really that surprising. They have 7 total players. They have 4 on the Seahawks, 3 on the Patriots. LSU has 5. They're number 2 on this list. Michigan, USC each have 4. And then a bunch of teams have 3 and 2. But it's kind of cool. Like, you see players from a lot of schools that you wouldn't even expect. We got a player on the Seahawks who went to Marist. We got a player on the Seahawks who went to Drake. It's a source of pride, especially for like the quote unquote smaller schools. But it also is a source of, I guess, reflecting on who has the power in college football too. If you look at the conference breakdown, the SEC has 16 players on the Patriots, 14 players on the Seahawks. The Big Ten's at number 2 with 11 players on the Patriots, 14 players on the Seahawks. ACC has 14 total players amongst these two teams. And this is the crazy part. The FCS is number 4 in terms of overall conferences with players on these 2 Super Bowl teams. And then it's the Big 12. They have 7 total players on these 2 teams. But it kind of goes back to show you, like, the Big Ten and the SEC hold all the cards in college football. And it's not just because they have the most money. Yes, they do. And they can give out the most money, but it all brings in the best players. And anyone who keeps saying, like, I think the era of asking for your team to go find that diamond in the rough is over. Oregon had a linebacker, Bryce Betcher, for the last couple of years. Started out as a walk-on, played baseball, got drafted in baseball, really developed himself in football. And that's great. That's a great story. But I don't know how much longer that's going to happen in this new era of college football, with the rosters being shrunk down to a certain amount. And walk-ons are going to be a lot less. Preferred walk-on spots are going to be a lot less. You're not going to have that diamond in the rough that you're going to have a sense of pride that you're developing to become an NFL player or an NFL superstar or whatever. More often than not, those people are the 4 or 5-star kids, 3, 4, 5-star kids that you were following their recruitment throughout their high school journey. So I'm excited. I hope the Super Bowl is one of those things. I actually got to get something out here. I was talking to my fiance earlier today, and I remember last year everyone was talking about, I don't want the Chiefs or the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. I don't want them to even be in the Super Bowl. We need something different. We need something new. And unless you're a Patriots or Seahawks fan, which I'm going to discount you guys right now, a lot of people haven't been talking about the Super Bowl as much. Well, so you got your wish. You got the new, but now you're not as excited. The whole buzz about the Super Bowl is not as excited. Now, I want to make it clear that's not me. I'm stoked for today's game. And obviously, by the time this podcast comes out, we'll all know how the game went. But at the time of recording, I'm recording it beforehand. So let's get into our quick conversations a little bit, and then we'll get you ready to go and have your nachos, your wings, your beer, whatever you're having. And I hope that your Super Bowl Sunday ends up being very, very fun and safe, hopefully safe. First order of business is the NCAA denied Trinidad Chambliss's waiver for a 6th year of eligibility. Now, I think this is the second time they've done that. And look, I think this might be ignorant for me to say because I'm not in his shoes. I will never be in his shoes. I'm not a super top tier athlete where I'll be not begging. I'll be appealing for a 6th year of eligibility in college football, uh, and my backup option would be entering the NFL draft. So I might be completely ignorant, but at some point, when is it time to just go? He's been denied a couple times, and it's because he had a respiratory issue during the 2022 and 2023 academic the calendar year season, whatever, when he was at Ferris State. So he's using that as well, this is why I should get another year of eligibility. Ole Miss Athletics came out and said the waiver request was still denied when it should have been approved at the NCAA level. Trinidad's representatives will continue to pursue all available legal remedies, and we will all publicly stand behind Trinidad while holding the NCAA accountable for a decision that fails to align with its own rules, precedent, and the documented medical record. I think whatever they end up deciding is going to be fine. Ole Miss is ready with a backup in Deuce Knight, the transfer that came over from Auburn. They have their plan B. Obviously, if Trinidad gets approved to come back for another year, he's going to be their starter. But I mean, you want the best for both of these programs, and I can certainly see what Ole Miss is saying here. The NCAA, their mission statement has always been to look out for the betterment and development and overall supporting the student athlete. And in this case, technically, they're not. But I think part of it is also why is he looking for a 6th year? You could be looking at it as this is a kid that was pretty under the radar. No one really knew about him. He won a couple of national titles at the Division II level, and then got his shot at the FBS level, Division I level, and he broke out onto the scene. And to be honest with you, I completely get it. He wants another year to see if he can boost his draft stock. I also do think, though, that there are ramifications of NIL being a factor in this case, where some of these kids who 5 years ago would have gone to the pros, either after the 3rd year, 4th year, or 5th year, now they're saying, well, why would I go to the pros, be a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, when I can just come back to school and make maybe the same amount of money, but be a start and be a true player and boost my stock for next year's draft. So I completely understand where Trinidad's coming from. It's a bummer for him, but hopefully this comes to fruition pretty soon. I will say this though, and it's pretty well reported at this point, but Trinidad is still suing the NCAA. So this doesn't mean that his entire chances of coming back next year are gone. He's looking to grant several injunctions that will basically clear the way for him to play in this next year. I hope whatever ends up happening, the NCAA finds a way to stand behind Trinidad, even if it's them denying it again. But I almost see both sides of this case, and hopefully, I don't know, it might be completely ignorant. Hopefully it comes to fruition soon. So the main thing I want to talk about today was P. Nakos' story on recruiting in today's modern college football. How does recruiting work in NIL, especially in this past year that I don't think many people realize? It's not just that college football and NIL is a thing now. It's that this past season, we got revenue sharing passed, and schools knew they needed to lock up a lot of their recruiting class before they got into the revenue share era. So a lot of their players and the money that they brought in would be grandfathered in, and they wouldn't be held to a limit or a cap that the revenue share cap holds. long story short, and a lot of boring comments there, I understand. Short, like USC, they hold the number one spot in recruiting with 24/7 and rivals on three. They have 35 commits, multiple 5 stars, and a couple SEC general managers told Pete Nakos that their class probably came in at close to $10 to $12 million. Now, if this happened before the if this happened after revenue sharing was approved, this wouldn't have been able to happen because you have the $20+ million cap for your entire athletic department. Now you're going to limit yourself to 10 to 12. That's bonkers on its own. And USC found a way to kind of skirt by it by trying to get all those kids committed beforehand. So same thing as Jason and I had said all summer. One of the reasons USC had 27 kids or something committed by July or June or August was because they wanted to get ahead of revenue share. Now, it'll be really interesting how this next cycle of recruiting goes down because obviously schools are going to still spend a ton of money. But how are they going to rosters build and how are they going to put the puzzle pieces together financially and roster wise to actually build a real team? So SEC staff were speculated that the Trojans class came in at $10 to $12 million, and they're doing it because here's a Big 12 general manager. Like I said earlier, I copy and pasted most of the article because it's bonkers. A Big 12 general manager on USC said they're doing something because they spent a lot of fucking money. They got a good class, but is Lincoln Riley going to be there to see them grow up, or is it going to be like Jimbo Fisher? I mean, that's a great question. I'm one of those people that finds it hard to see anyone parting ways with Lincoln Riley unless it's a mutual parting of ways. I don't think that Lincoln Riley is one of those coaches that he's in over his head and doesn't know what he's doing. I think there's a lot of hard truths that he had to accept after his first couple of years at USC about how he runs practices, about how much attention he needs to also give to the rest of the team, about how he needs to be more of a CEO coach rather than this offensive guru. And he's made some changes, but the only problem with USC and Lincoln Riley was he asked USC fans to essentially treat year 3 as year 1 for him. It's like, all right, now we're going to start the rebuild. No, like that's what pisses off so many people, and that's also what makes so many people angry at the Lincoln Riley experiment at USC. Everyone thought it was going to lead to national titles. I'll be the first one to say, and I know Jace agrees with me. Lincoln's made some changes in the last couple of years that if he's allowed to see them to fruition with the GM that they brought in from Notre Dame, with the defensive changes that they're making, they brought in a new DC just this past week. With all these changes that Lincoln's making, that's not going to be a team that you're going to want to play in a couple of years. Granted, they hold on to those players. They're rather safe in terms of who's leaving in the program coaching wise, and Lincoln still has his job. They're going to be hard to beat. We know what he does offensively. We know what he does with quarterbacks. But if that defense, just by virtue of having better players, ends up being a much better unit, oh my God. USC is going to be really good. That's why I sincerely believe, like, Kirby Smart said it best. I think almost in response to Dan Mullen when he was at Florida, it was like Dan Mullen was talking about how much more important it was to be with his guys rather than recruiting new guys. And you get that. But at the same time, Kirby, in response to him, was said, I love my guys, but I'm a good coach, and I believe I'm a good coach, but I'm a better coach when I have better players. And I think that's a lot of what USC just needs. Through a lot of money, which is legal, they're loading that roster up. So we'll see how USC does in another year of Lincoln, seeing how that defense grows and if his offense is going to be just as good, because they're going to be a hard out. I think they're going to be a hard out, and that's overall the USC side of it. The other thing in this article, Texas Tech, it almost feels like agents and GMs around the country are pretty annoyed at Texas Tech. They're the new kid on the block with the new money. It's almost like these old programs who have had history of winning are annoyed by another program trying to step in, causing change. Texas Tech was, as Pete Nikos put it, they were the second most mentioned program. They signed 2 5-stars, and then the other programs that spent the most were Miami, Oregon, Texas A&M. But a SEC GM said the Texas Tech tax is real. Agents will mention a number from Tech just to drive the price up. I think that happens regardless, whether it's Texas Tech or not. And a lot of programs are probably mentioning Texas Tech because they're just new. If you're thinking about it, if you're Georgia, I'm not saying this is Georgia's GM, but if you're Georgia and you're going for Jared Curtis, who obviously committed to them, but then decommitted from them and is at Vanderbilt now. You're going after Jared Curtis, and you know, okay, Miami's in on him, Oregon's in on him, we're in on him. That's almost normal. You're like, okay, they're all going to bid high, and then all of a sudden, Texas Tech comes in with a massive amount of massive offer, and you're like, what the hell are you guys doing? I think SEC GMs and coaches are just annoyed at Texas Tech in general. And then on the Texas Tech front, there were multiple GMs, or at least one for sure, that fully bashed one of their signees, a 5-star offensive lineman, Felix Ojo, said he's underrated, said he's not going to be good. He's going to get paid $775,000 a year, and is one of the biggest overspends of the cycle. I was like, all right, you can believe that, but I don't know, at least from my perspective, how much of your take there is because you're mad that you didn't get him, so now you're lashing out, or how much of your take there is actually true and your evaluation, your tape study tells you that he's not good. Jackson Cantwell apparently made the most money from NIL from Miami. Jared Curtis was the second most mentioned recruit. Mark Bowman, the tight end to USC, got paid a ton. I mean, they're saying Mark Bowman got paid. That guy has to be a hit, a major hit, a grand slam. We have entered the era of college football, and this is the main reason I even want to talk about this story is listen to that line again. That guy has to be a major hit, a grand slam. Now, 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, they all hit at crazy rates and they all bust at crazy rates too. But we're in an era of college football where because the kids are getting paid so much, they ask to be treated like employees. They ask to be paid. They ask for special help from universities, whether it's flight stipends or hotel rooms, insurance. They're asking for that stuff. That's all dictated in this article. When you ask for that stuff, you have to be understanding as a player and as the program that's bringing them in that they're going to be treated the same way on the negative side too. If he's not a hit, it's no longer going to be like the best person I can think of, Justin Flo, 5-star kid, went to Oregon, I think in the 2020 class, and he's at like 3 or 4 programs now. It's not going to be fade into obscurity, but allow the kids to still play college football and chase his dream and get better. If a guy doesn't hit, there's going to be like major ramifications, not only on him until his contract's up, but also on the people who brought him in. In the past, it's been, yes, if you don't evaluate well, if you don't recruit well in traditional recruiting, yeah, you probably got fired for that, but not because of how much money you paid him for how little production. We saw an ACC GM in this article say, we look at stars and rankings, but more than anything right now, we're looking for how fast can we get our ROI? How fast can we get a return on what we're investing in you? So they're treating them like employees. All right, another hodgepodge. I know basically I'm not even breaking down all this, but it's a hodgepodge of takes that I've seen just responding to these quotes. A Big 12 general manager said, if I become a 5-star, can I get another 100,000? Absolutely, I'll do that. I'm going to text Pete Nakos and Steve Wilfong to make sure you don't become one, but that happens 100%. Basically, what this was in regards to was programs get, like, even if you have a kid committed or if you have a kid that is strongly considering your program, when they get ratings bumps, they're going to all of a sudden go to all the schools that they're talking to and be like, hey, I want another 100 grand because you're going to be able to add a 5-star to your commit list. And if you don't pay me it, you're going to lose a 5-star that was on your commit list. And that looks just as bad as it would have looked good the other way. So on one hand, that's happening from the player kid side. But I don't know if you guys noticed what I said over here. I'm going to text Pete Nakos and Steve Wiltfong to make sure you don't become one. And obviously, that GM probably said it tongue in cheek. But you have to understand the state of this industry right now. These programs are very little, they're incentivized to not offer kids early, to just talk to them, try to keep them under the radar, make sure that they are not seen by as many universities. I mean, the old, like what we always know, like Joey McGuire, we know him. He's a really good coach. One of the things that always hurt him at Texas Tech before NIL was him and his staff were always one of the first people to offer these lower ranked 3-star, lower ranked 4-star kids because they had relationships in the Texas high school scene. They had relationships with those kids and they evaluated really well. But eventually it became because they got to that guy first, they got to that guy early. And, oh, Georgia's coming sniffing around. It's like, what does Texas Tech got? Ohio State's coming, Oregon's coming, Penn State's coming. All of a sudden, this low-ranked kid who probably appreciates the hell out of you, Texas Tech, for evaluating him, noticing him, giving him his first opportunity. Now he's stuck with a decision that is going to end up being too hard to pass up from Penn State over Texas Tech, too hard to pass up from Ohio State. So now these programs are incentivized to keep kids under the radar. I'd rather you not get bumped up to a 4 or 5-star because you were noticed by other people. I'd rather you be a lower ranked kid that people aren't noticing just so we can get you on the cheap and we don't have to risk either losing you or getting into a bidding war for you. This whole article is bonkers. And I said that a couple of times, but we'll get into all of that, if not more, with Jace on next week's show. But we have plenty to talk about with Jace, so let's get into that right now. And all I've been thinking about this week, Jace, is I got reminded of our off season last year when we started posting on TikTok a little bit, when we started talking about Florida, especially, and their fans came out with claws at us. I was just thinking, like, on Thursday or Wednesday, thank God Lane Kiffin didn't go to Florida. Or else, I'm not saying that he would have made them better. He probably would have. I'm not saying that they would have immediately become national contenders. He probably would have made them that. And I'm not saying that John Summerall is not going to do any of those things. But the arrogance and cockiness we saw from a Billy Napier fan base transplanted onto a Lane Kiffin fan base would have been unbearable.
It would have been horrible. And then just like last year, there was really no ground to stand on other than all these what ifs going correctly. That only gets worse with Lane Kiffin. It would only have been worse. And it would have been kind of funny to have, like, if any of the tampering allegations to go against Lane Kiffin were to be him at Florida instead, like with the stuff that had happened with LSU recently. That also would have been hilarious because we would have definitely come at them for that, which would have in turn re-upped our Florida beef, our beef with them, their beef with us.
The funny thing you say about that is I do think we don't have it out for any program. I mean, I think our listeners know what program that, like, we're alums of, but we don't have a hatred towards any program. We'll talk about everyone, and except Washington. But I do think it's funny that, like, our natural instinct would be Florida does something, we got to go attack that, or we got to go talk about it. But Lane Kiffin is literally being investigated by the College Sports Commission. This is going to be the first investigation. Now, when we'll get into, like, our actual topics and stories, but the article that came out by The Athletic that's reported the College Sports Commission is investigating LSU. I actually read it, and it's like, oh, they won't have a conversation because some things aren't adding up. It's not like they're actually having, like, investigators go into the facilities and talk to people and take people's phones and whatever. It's literally, yeah, they hope to set up a Zoom call soon.
Yeah,
That
useless.
that's
Waste
just
of time.
like, if, yeah. I mean, who knows who knows what they'll do there. But no, I was just thinking, like, how unbearable would our comment sections be on TikTok, especially
With
if
Aaron Philo, with Aaron Philo defenders, we come out in masses. Or Taylor Trammell, a lot of people talked about him.
dude, you you would get hated on the most though by them. All right, we got a big show planned for everybody. There's like a couple pieces of news to actually talk about, but a lot of just random college football stories that I just want our takes on, and I want to talk about it. Obviously, Darian Mensah to Miami. Colorado has a fun new. Colorado is starting to treat their student athletes like employees, and there's an actual good debate of what's right, what's wrong to talk about there. Obviously, we have to talk about the Owen Heinecke situation at Oklahoma, and the targeting might change as a rule. So much to talk about. Make sure you are tuned in to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Flag for Discussion Spelled Out. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at Flag for Discussion Spelled Out. We're also on TikTok at F4Discussion, Florida fans, and on Twitter at TikTok at flag the number 4 discussion and Twitter at the number 4 discussion. I was too worried about making a joke and I screwed up our socials. This is a hell of a start to episode 65, 66 for Flag for Discussion. Jace, we're a little off the rails, or at least I am. Darian Mensah, his commitment, his enrollment to Miami appears to have been official. So for anyone who's been sleeping under a rock for the last week and hasn't been paying attention to what happened, Darian Mensah entered the transfer portal on the last day of the portal being open. Though I thought this was about to get ugly, but they reached a settlement out of court. All that I think really means is Mensah had to pay Duke back some money, and that probably is being covered by Miami. Like whatever he had to pay them back, Miami's like, we'll help you out. We can get into what this actually means for the programs, but like, what'd you make of the situation?
We've kind of been consistent on this. I don't like that you can sign a contract with a team that says, I'm here for the long haul, I'm here for another year, and then just back out of it because you got a better offer. Like in no other world of employment and contracts is that allowed without some version of a clause, whether release clause or buyout or things of that nature. So I think, like, first and foremost, I guess it's twofold. Number one, it's the NCAA we need to figure out if these guys are employees or they're student athletes. I don't think we have a really blurry line of what they are and what they aren't. And right now it's kind of playing in the hands of, they get to be student athletes when it's convenient to be student athletes, and they get to be employees when it's convenient to be employees. And I think we need to figure out what they are and define that. That's the NCAA. I say we, the NCAA. I know you and I would gladly sit down and do that if it was our jobs, but the NCAA first and foremost needs to define what they are and what that means. And then I think secondly, the other aspect is just like we would talk about the agents a lot in college football and who's in these kids' ear. In the NFL, you have to be a signed agent with, like, there's X, Y, and Z requirements you have to hit with the NFL and with the Players Association, and you have to have all these credibility, and you have to be like a real agent if you're going to represent someone in the NFL. And that's good because real agents, you have to know law, right? You have to know contract law. You have to be good at negotiations. And if you're a real agent, you have a little bit more credibility. Like, oh, he actually cares about his clients. That's why people go there. I have no idea who his agent is. No clue. But I do know with a lot of what we've seen recently, what we've seen a lot recently is these guys just, like, you have no idea who's representing them. You have no idea who's in their ears telling them what to do. And I think it's safe to say a majority of the time, these people don't have the best interest long-term for these kids in mind, and they're making decisions. And I'm not saying that Miami isn't the right decision for him long-term, but what I'm saying is causing drama like this, I don't know if that's what's best for him. And you don't know who's in these kids' ears. You don't know who's telling them what. You don't know what advice they're giving, and you don't know what their legal background is. You have no idea what they know about contract law. You have no idea why they're in it or what they're in it for. All we know is that Darian Mensah signed a contract with Duke to play for another year, was set to play for Duke while he was under contract, was clearly tampered with by Miami. He was offered a bunch of things that we don't know if they're legal or not, they're allowed to offer or not. And then he accepts it, goes through a settlement. That settlement was all behind closed doors. We don't know what happened there. And now he is going to Miami. And from what we've heard, it is I don't know the truth, so I don't want to like sit here and share the contract details, but from what we've heard and what's being reported, it's like an unbelievable, how can you promise a college kid country club access and houses and all this kind of stuff? So unbelievable.
So on that note, I think there's so much to break down there of what you said. Obviously, I think I'll touch on the agent stuff. But the thing that I think is broken here is not just the player breaching their contract. I think that is obviously something that lends a hand. I talked about it on the show last week about Pete Golding just straight up texting a signed Clemson linebacker saying, yo, I know you're signed. What's your buyout? Like that's a problem. I get that. But I do think there's a big problem in the fact that it was an unintended consequence of the NCAA actually making things better of having one transfer portal cycle. And I broke this down a little bit on Monday as well. But the NCAA having one transfer portal cycle forces teams to rush to put their roster together and at the last minute. And whatever you think, or not you personally, though you at home think that Miami was doing during that week, because obviously they were preparing for games. I get that, but they have GMs, they have personnel people that'll handle a lot of stuff, and Mario doesn't sleep. Whatever you think they were doing that week, it wasn't because they were game planning and practicing that they missed out on the top quarterbacks. The top quarterbacks just chose other programs. So then the reason that this even happened with Duke and Darian Mensah was because they were entering the last day of the transfer portal, and Miami still didn't have a quarterback. They struck out on Sam Levitt. They struck out on Brennan Sorsby. They struck out on every Dylan Raiola. They struck out on all the quarterbacks that entered the portal. So their only option for next year, and we've talked about this ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks, was a program like Miami can't afford to take a step back next year. They
Hmm.
need a veteran quarterback. They cannot develop quarterbacks anymore and hope like the whole premise of saying, I'm going to go take this 4-star kid and hope he develops. That's not going to happen, because even if he does develop, he's going to develop for someone else, because you're not going to be able to convince your fan base, your donors, your AD that, yeah, this kid's been in our program for 3 years. He hasn't been good enough for the first 3 years, but we want to go win a national championship with $20 million invested into our roster. You're not going to be able to convince any one of the higher powers in your program that, yeah, that kid's the kid we're trusting, even though we have no idea what it's going to look like. So with the transfer portal entering a one-time transfer portal window instead of a two-time, Miami panicked. Miami went
Hmm.
to, like, all right, what quarterback can we go get? What do we know about maybe his contract? Who are the agents? Darren Mensah probably was like the best of both worlds for them, of talent plus gettability. Like, no offense to Duke at all, but I feel like if Mensah was maybe, I don't know, at Penn State, on the same contract, everything, there would be more reason to stay at Penn State, probably, knowing the receivers, and not this iteration of Penn State, but like a normal iteration. The receivers, the offensive line, the running back, the defense he would have around him. He would not only have the opportunity to compete for a national title, but he would also be protected. He would have receivers to throw to, blah, blah, blah. I know I'm on a big tangent. I think there's a lot to talk about, and we will, about the agent side of this and the player side of this. I do think it's really interesting, the unintended consequence of the NCAA changing the transfer portal window for 2 weeks, two windows to one window. That this is one of those cases.
Yeah, it feels like every decision they make, there's unintended consequences they don't think thoroughly about. And I like a lot what you said. I'm going to add another wrinkle into that, and that's also the schedule. When you have one transfer portal window, that is still starts during the season. Like, there are still teams playing football. It also makes it difficult because hypothetically, you can kind of assume of the 12 playoff teams, like 8 plus are all high level, well funded teams that are going to be powerhouses in recruiting cycles and in the transfer portal. So once those teams finally lose, all of a sudden you start throwing in teams that are coming in hungry to go get players out of the portal. So kind of nobody's safe now that, oh, like Oregon is lost. Oh, Miami's lost. Ohio State's lost. Well, they're all going to get hungry in the portal and go get guys that they think they need. Plus, you have guys that are entering the portal late because their teams are still playing. And it's a whole mess, like you had said. And it creates a world where you have guys being recruited that are still playing football games. You have guys being recruited that are signed under contract with other teams. No one really knows who's available, who's not. There's not really any crackdown on tampering. So we know tampering's wrong, but because no one actually cracks down on it, coaches do it because they don't really care. They know they're not going to get in trouble for it. So it's just a whole mess. And it's like you said, it's the classic unintended consequence when NCAA makes a decision. It's the same thing when they rush to make NIL and they rush to open the portal up a little bit more. They just don't think through things. And this is one of the nightmare scenarios that we now have to deal with because of the decision. And like, I don't get me wrong, the decision go from 2 windows to 1, I like as a whole. I think that was the right
That
step.
was a good
It's
decision,
just the
absolutely.
execution. Yeah, the execution was poor. Maybe start it after. Let's start here. Let's start it after the season. Let's let the games play before we start doing coaching changes and player changes and all of that. We shouldn't be having, like, in the NFL, Bill Belichick wasn't 1 foot out the door in New England, like recruiting for UNC while trying to coach a playoff run, right? Like, he was all in on his team until the end of the season, and then you talk about coordinators leaving, and then coaching cycles kind of happen there.
But Bill Belichick also didn't have to deal with the academic calendar.
Yeah, that's fair as well. But I almost, like, I'm gonna get some flack for saying this maybe, but why do we care about the academic calendar with these kids? I can tell you
Because
firsthand, these kids
that's the only
don't
reason.
they don't give a shit about the academic calendar. Now that they're being paid million, they already didn't give a shit when they weren't paid, and it was free school. You think they give more of a shit now that they're being paid? No shot.
They're saying that they
It
care about the school. I'm saying I think it's more like just school rules. Like you could only be
yeah,
enrolled
yeah, yeah.
in
I'm
the
saying, like,
University of
we shouldn't
Georgia.
even care about that anymore. Like,
Right.
I'm saying because the kids don't care, why, like, I hate that the NCAA acts like they like to, like, the student athlete thing, maybe is what I'm getting at. We don't treat them like student athletes. They're treated like employees. So why do we, like, keep these academic minor things? And then clearly the NCAA doesn't care, because look at Luke Farrell in Clemson. He, like, attended class at Clemson this semester. And then all of a sudden now he's at Ole Miss. Like, how does that work? So I don't know.
On that note, Jordan Seaton, and we saw his whole recruitment play out. He ends up committing to LSU, but his finals were Miami, LSU, and Oregon. And when he committed, he was actually past the enrollment deadline for Oregon and LSU. And lo and behold, he's at LSU. So I say that to say I saw a tweet after he committed saying when alignment with your school president, your AD, your GM, and your head coach are high, you can move mountains. Yeah, programs themselves don't care about the academic calendar. If it means they can get a 5-star superstar left tackle, yeah, hell yeah, he's coming in. I don't care what point of the semester he's in. He'll start with a B. You're right. This kid's making more. And no offense to the professors out there, this kid's making more in 1 year to play 12 games to 16 games of college football than like the professors who are giving his grades could ever dream of making in their career. So at that point, like the GM, the head coach, the school president, they don't care either. There's like, yeah, I just want him as a roster piece. You can figure school out later.
Mhm. Yeah, it also kind of reminds me, think of the scenario with, like, amateur athletes in professional sports, how they have, like, secondary job, like minor league baseball players, kind of what I'm thinking in my head. How they're like accountants by day, and a baseball player by night. Unless they're like,
Uber
sometimes you
drivers,
have like
absolutely.
18-year-olds and stuff. Yeah, and it's
Bartenders, Uber
crazy
drivers.
because they have to, like, have real jobs to support themselves as professional athletes, and now we've gone the complete opposite direction. The, like, academic calendar aspect, yeah, I don't buy it, because, like, yeah, if Oregon, I know he went to LSU, but I know damn well if he goes to Oregon, he somehow, all of a sudden you could be in business 101, and here comes Jordan Seaton to sit next to you, and you're like, this is week 5, and Oregon's on a quarter system, so we only have 10 weeks of classes. He would have joined, like, week 4 or week, like, he would join halfway through the semester and somehow gotten a better grade than you, and you've been there all the time. Also, like, look at Carson Beck, his interview, and he was asked about classes, and he kind of laughed. He's like, I'm not taking classes here. Yeah, I
I
hope he
thought
was joking. uh,
No,
or-
what he said was so I would listen to the couple comments after. I think it's a clear case, not you, but like I've heard people on the radio and on TV being like, "It's a sham. Carson Beck doesn't take class." I'm like, he literally said a couple lines later, he's enrolled in classes that he takes, but it's for a program that he won't be able to finish because he's leaving Miami. So like he's like, yeah, I got my undergrad already from Georgia. I took those classes, but he's into some sort of master's program, I guess. And he just knew from the beginning he wasn't going to finish it, so why care about going to class?
yeah.
I do think it was blown out of proportion though. There were some people just like, yeah, this kid's a professional athlete. I'm like, yeah, that's probably true, but he's also not like fully. I think you have to have a certain amount of credits to be able to play call for your school, depending on the school.
I have no idea how the credits work, because, like, freshmen play, and they obviously wouldn't have credits to, like, play in that case. But Yeah, I don't like you also I think it's also annoying and reason why a lot of people felt annoyed. Imagine like think of 99% of college students in America pay money out of our pockets to attend these classes and all that. And like on the flip side, these guys are getting paid they get paid seven figures. And all they have to do is like have a pulse. And like we know how it works. They're all gonna
I
get
mean,
passing grades, right? Football players, like they're not some of them care and so they'll try. But if they don't care and they don't try, they'll figure it out. So I think it's annoying when you're like, man, I'm in student loan debt and I would kill to get free education, let alone get paid seven figures to just get C's. I think people get annoyed by that. And you also have your like test cases of like Justin Herbert, who took advantage and like got a 3-year degree as quickly as he could and then tried to get a fourth in there. But obviously he went to the NFL. So you have some players too who like actually care and like take advantage of these opportunities. The amount of guys that get master's degrees because they get to play an extra year of grad school and they take advantage. I think people were just annoyed that Carson Beck was kind of like, I'm slacking. Yeah, haha.
yeah,
Like it annoyed me in that regard. I was kind of like, really, dude? Like, there's so many people who would kill for this opportunity, and you're just kind of making fun of it.
I do think it fits the personality, or at least the online identity that people made of Carson Beck, whether it's fair or not. Because I think,
Yeah.
like, to your point, I think if like Dante Moore said that, I don't think the outrage would be as high. People would be like, "Oh, that's funny. He's probably going to class tomorrow. Like he's probably joking. He's just being a nice guy." But I think so many people have made up their minds on Carson Beck already around the country that it when especially being a national championship game presser, talk, he got so much shit for it. But I mean, I also like to play devil's advocate. 99% of us college students are also not bringing in or part of a product that's bringing in $100+ million for your university. I think Ohio State just
That's a fantastic point.
like Ohio State, and I get it. Students everywhere are doing some big things for their universities just by being involved. But Ohio State just reported that their athletic department revenue just eclipsed $300 million for the first time. Joe from accounting is not doing that. Julie's
He's crunching
saying
those
is
numbers
doing
though.
that. Joe from accounting in the athletic stuff, athletics office is. Joe from accounting 101 isn't. So like that's just to play devil's advocate there. Like I agree with most of what you said, but it's like there's a reason these kids are finally getting paid, and this is going back to the NIL argument that people had like 7 years ago. Like, do they even deserve to get paid? Well, yeah, they're bringing in this money. But yes, you're right. The school and everything. Okay, we've gone on a tangent. Let's talk about real quick about Carson Beck's old school, though, because if Darren
Hmm.
Mensa didn't end up going there, they would have been not stuck, but Luke Nickel, a 4-star quarterback. They would have Emory Williams, who's been the backup for a while. He transferred to East Carolina. And then redshirt freshman Judd Anderson, and then an incoming freshman, Darren Coleman, in the quarterback room. There's a reason they panicked. There's a reason they needed to go because their roster next year is still going to be awesome. They're losing a
Hmm.
lot on the defensive and offensive lines, but that's been replenished. Maybe it's not Ruben Bain, maybe it's not Francis Mauigoa, but it's a name that next year at this time or 2 years from now at this time we're also going to be talking about, probably in the same light as Ruben Bain and Francis Mauigoa. Mensa was asked about the move. He said Miami's going to take me to the place I want to go, which is ultimately the NFL. They've got NFL coaches. Coach Dawson, the offensive coordinator, what he does with quarterbacks, his track record is pretty amazing, and it's something I want to be a part of. The way Coach Cristobal protects the quarterback, he'll always have a solid O line, and the weapons just all around the team and everyone that's a part of Miami seems like it was a great fit for me. You had a take on this, so I'll let you run with it. But I do think good quote. I could have done without it.
I agree. I could have done without it as well. He's not wrong. Like Miami's a good program, and like you said, Miami's at a spot where they have a good enough roster that undoubtedly like they were a quarterback away from competing. You can't waste a Malachi Tony, his sophomore year kind of thing. Miami and Duke have the same amount of first round quarterbacks in the last 35 years. So when he made the comment, I want to make the NFL, I want to be a first round pick, all signs point towards Miami. Excuse me. Duke and Miami have the same amount of first round quarterbacks. I can at least you can say Duke's was developed. Miami just bought Cam Ward for 1 year and he, made the NFL. And then on the flip side, yes, Miami played in the national championship this year. Guess who won the ACC? Duke did. Miami didn't.
Duke did.
So like it is kind of funny. It is like funny that he kind of like every point he made for Miami is a valid point. Like he didn't say anything wrong. but it's also a valid point for Duke. Like he could have said those same things and it would have been true of Duke. They also have quarterbacks in the NFL. In fact, like they have more quarterbacks in the NFL than Miami does. And I wouldn't say Carson Beck was particularly like he was a good quarterback all season, but I don't think Carson Beck was like this great case study of man, Miami really turns quarterbacks that are not good into superstars. Like Cam Ward was the same quarterback that he came into Miami that he left with. And Carson Beck was like a national he was on the same again, he was the same quarterback that he came in that he left with. We both have a lot of admiration for Mario. We both also know he does not develop quarterbacks. So like Darian Mensa, who you are today is who you will be when you leave Miami. Who knows what that would be true or Duke or not. And the one thing I want to say, I'll expand a little bit. He was asked about any message to Duke fans.
That was
He said,
ridiculous.
"What do I want to say to Duke? Yeah, what do I want to say to Duke fans? I'll probably just leave that alone. To be honest, they're pretty hostile towards me. I'm obviously grateful for all the support I've received during the season. Duke's a special place. I've got nothing but good things to say about that place, changing my life in the best way possible. Grateful." Second part is fantastic. He should have only said the second part. Yeah, no shit, they're hostile towards you, bro. You kind of fucked them all over. Sorry for my language. You screwed them all over. And then to play victim, to be the one to like screw over your school in a really fishy, like interesting way, and then play victim because they didn't like it. That's bizarre to me. Just say the grateful part. Just start with, I'm grateful for all the support I've received. Duke's a special place. I've got nothing but good things to say. Just that's all you need to say. Don't play victim.
You could have just avoided that whole argument, that whole like not even playing victim, but attacking like you're kicking them while they're down. You don't need to say they're hostile towards you. No shit. There's a reason you left them. You left them high and dry. And yes, there was a settlement, so technically Duke was paid back. No, they weren't. You also took their number one receiver because you want to play with him at Miami. So it wasn't Duke is not coming out the victors in this because there was a settlement. So Duke fans have every right to be unhappy with what happened. And by the way, this goes back to the last show, but the reason tampering isn't caught right now or isn't enforced by the NCAA is because coaches don't want to put official appeals because they know that they're going to do it to someone else too. So they're like, "Hey, Jace, I'm not going to call you out for what you're doing because I know one day I'm going to do it, or I'm going to do it to you, and we're going to have this like handshake agreement to be like, yeah, we're going to be unhappy with each other. We're going to call each other and curse each other out, but we're going to be like, I get it." Like that's just how the world works. So what Duke's going to do right now, they're going to go tamper and get another quarterback. That maybe not tamper because the portal's closed, no one can enter anymore. But as long as a kid's not signed, they're going to go make sure that they screw someone else over and get another quarterback. That's the first thing that happened. Like Duke put the temporary restraining order and the TRO in, and then they went and tampered with the kid just to make sure that you should hop in the portal. I don't know if we're going to get you. I don't know if Darian's necessarily leaving, but if he does, I want you at Duke. That kid came and visited like 2 days later. Tampering is this whole ball game. This is why I love off-season episodes. We're 29 minutes in, and we're technically on the first topic. We've gone everywhere.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you what direction. We took 3 lefts, then we went straight for a while, then we took the next exit, and then we got back on, and we haven't even moved on. Like all of this too is funny because we'll get to the Deion Sanders conversation when we're ready. But a lot of what we say here kind of bleeds into that, right? With like, at the end of the day, how do you define student athlete versus employee? How do you what are the barriers between that? What are the walls? What are the lines? And then what are the rules? Like, you can't just like in the NFL. I know we're not an NFL podcast, but obviously it's a good example because it's college football's kind of headed more towards that. If you are Jared Goff, you're signed on the Lions. We talk about him on here, so I'll use him as an example. You're signed with the Lions. You can't just like Mike Vrabel can't call Jared Goff and be like, "Hey, man, back out of your contract and Patriots want you." Like that's illegal. You can't do that until he's a free agent or like, knowingly going to be a free agent that next season. And there's rules. Like if like, I don't know why I'm using Mike Vrabel as an example. I think he's an outstanding guy. I don't think he'd ever do this, but for whatever reason, they have Drake May anyways. But well, if Mike Vrabel did that, that would be the biggest headline in football. And it would be, a huge fine and it would be a big issue and a lot would happen and it would be a big deal. Like, we need something. And maybe this is a good transition to the Deion conversation because he's actually, for all the flack he gets, and from me, hand up, I'm one of those people at times. I actually think what he's doing is a good thing. And to kind of inform our listeners of what Deion is doing. So this was a video from Well Off Media. That's Deion Jr.'s channel. He had a fine list, like fine as in finding somebody, a fine list for in the Colorado facilities for his football players to follow. So I'll go through some of them here. There's more. You can Google like the Deion fine list and you'll see it. But a cost of tardiness. So if you are late to a meeting or film session, that's a $400 fine. Late to practice is 500. Late to a workout or treatment is 1,000. You miss a workout or treatment, 1,500. You miss a film session or a meeting, 2,000. You miss practice, 2,500. Social media misconduct or public misconduct can carry a penalty up to $5,000 based on the dictation of the team. Colorado state officials have said these fines are for violating internal team rules. They're not linked to NIL or performance, which they claim makes them permissible under current university policy. Give me
So
your reaction to that.
I want to go back a couple seconds before I get here. Mike Vrabel, whether you think he's a good guy or not, if let me go back in time. The year Tom Brady was out for the year with an injury, you're telling me Bill Belichick, if the collective bargaining agreement allowed him to go poach a quarterback, he wouldn't have called up somebody saying like, well, this isn't
It's a
going to be a
great point.
washed year, or I'm going to go call someone up and bring someone in. The NFL coaches and players would do it, but there are specific parameters and laws that are not only negotiated by the players union and the NFL. There's a collective bargaining agreement. There's a commissioner and oversight committees that make sure it happens. And there's people that enforce rules and apply suspensions and punishments. So the way to get to that for college football is you have to drop this whole dog and pony show of still pretending like this is college football. And that hurts me to my core because I love college football, but this is a semi-pro league theoretically right now, and at least you could set it up to like this is the entry level, this is the prep league, the G League essentially for the NFL, and you need someone to essentially be a players union rep. You need someone to be a rep of the organizations. But right now, the problem is we have like 15 small organizations, as in conferences, working for and against each other. If you wrap them all into one and have one commissioner that can then negotiate on behalf of all of college football with a players union, you can collectively bargain. You announce all these guys as employees, then you can actually start enforcing some of these rules. But until we stop pretending like college football is still the college football we grew up with, it's not going to happen. And I like moving to the Dion thing. I think this is only an act that would work by Dion though. Like I think if not because he's like cool, or I think it's because he's an NFL Hall of Famer. And but one thing he does for, like you said, for all the people that give him shit, one thing he does is like he pours into the kids. Like he cares about the kids. He cares about fellowship. He cares about the ones that want to learn about faith. He brings them up. He like everything that those kids want to do. He at least tries to advance. Now, after if they leave or get out, yeah, he might talk a little bad about them. That's where people start like being a little upset, or like he'll have it's personal comments and videos that go out. Yeah, but it's another thing to like. I don't think if let's say I don't know Brent Brennan at Arizona, if he walked into the meeting and was like, well, in the NFL, they fine players for missing practice or being late to practice, so we're going to do it here. I don't think that would work. I think like Jed Fish could do it, and that would be the start. I think Dion can do it, and people will take it seriously. And I do wonder how are they enforcing it? Where is that money going? Like, is it going to a big pizza party at the end of the year? Is it going to Dion, or is it going into like the collectives of for Colorado athletics?
Going to your replacement that they're going to buy in the portal next year.
Yeah, is pretty much yeah. So that on that nose, I also wonder how is it adjusted for the kids you're not paying? Because there's no way they're paying 85 guys or 105 guys a ton of money like these fines would be deemed worthy. But at the same time, I guess that's why they're fines. They're supposed to hurt a little bit and keep you from missing practice or being late to stuff.
Yeah, that's kinda how I take it. Like, even for the kids who aren't getting paid or getting paid very little, and this would be more detrimental to, I also think, like, rightfully so, those are probably the kids who shouldn't be missing film. Like, if you are so low on the totem pole of NIL than being paid, that probably means you are not in a spot to compete. It means you're probably super competitive for starting spots. So, you probably should not be missing film anyways, like, right? Like, if you are trying to earn playing time, missing film is probably not the way to earn playing time. So I like it. I like it a lot as a whole. I would be interested to see if more schools follow suit like this, or if they come up with other ways to start kind of holding kids accountable in regards to that. And my other take of it is I don't like that it has to come down to like coaches trying to figure out their own rules to hold kids accountable. And this again, this goes. I know I'm sound like a beating a dead horse, but it goes to, are these student athletes, are these employees? You think about like employees, like I can't just like not show up to work, next week because I don't feel like it. Like there would be repercussions that would go poorly. I can't just like enter the portal and go get a new job elsewhere. Like that's going to reflect poorly on me, and that would be detrimental to my career, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see, are these student athletes, are these employees? Dion's treating them like an employee, and I think I respect that. If you're going to get paid a lot of money to be here, then you need to be here. And if you're not, if you don't want to be here, then that's fine. But you're going to pay the price for that. Like you're not going to just make money and be here. So I like the direction it's headed. I'm very curious to see if it's adopted because I'm with you. There's schools and programs that I think could get away with this. And there are others that I do not think. Like I was like, if Matt Rule tried doing this in Nebraska, it's not going well,
Laugh in his
right?
face.
But yeah, but if Ohio State did this, yeah, I think like you have to earn the right to be a Buckeye, and if you were to put something in place like this, that would be a very fair way to like force kids to be at the top of their level performing. So it is interesting to see like who can get away with it, who can't, how are teams going to adapt this rule style. But it was an interesting headline that I did actually respect a lot when I saw it originally.
Now, granted, I do think one aspect that we should take with a cherry on top, I mean, a grain of salt, not cherry on top. That's weird. With a grain of salt is the fact that, like, we don't know if other programs do this or not necessarily.
That's
Dion's is
true.
the
Yep.
one that was publicized because they create those videos, but we don't necessarily know if Oregon does it. We don't know if Florida does it. We don't know if Kalen DeBoer, Alabama does it. I'm sure there's punishments. I mean, every coach throughout history has had punishments for being late to practice, but a lot of times like sprints or whatever. But now there's financial like incentives to not miss practice. I do wonder, like going back to the whole broader NIL transfer portal, college football, make them employees conversation is one of the other benefits of the NFL being collectively bargained, and you talked about it in your spiel about agents, but there's just so much more transparency. The players union, the commissioner's office of the NFL make it so you have to release like true and accurate injury reports. Now the Big 10, the SEC and the ACC Big 12, they've started doing that, but it's kinda like wishy-washy still. It's not like the
Yeah.
same as the NFL, like, reporting this guy's questionable on Wednesday, he's practicing on it's like, here's their availability report on Friday, and then maybe an updated one on Saturday, and then here's game time. That's that transparency. We don't know what Lincoln Riley's technically making at USC because private schools don't have to release their financials for their employees. The fact that like, not that I need to know what the quarterback of the University of Oklahoma is making, that's not important, but it's more important to know what like the salaries of these kids, because I do think there's an aspect of like, as long as the general public doesn't know and everyone just thinks they're just all getting it back. Like, I think if there could be a receiver that could get hated on online for getting a bag theoretically and transferring to somewhere else, like, oh, that kid only left Cal because Arizona gave him a bag. That kid only left Syracuse because Virginia Tech gave him a bag. And then if that was actually transparent and we saw how much money that they were actually paid, you'd be like, "Nah, he wasn't paid a bag. He actually saw an opportunity, or he, like, knows the coach." Like, he wasn't paid the 2,000,000 that you're saying he was paid and that you just shit on him for on social media. He was paid, like, 300 grand in a drink. Like, I do wonder if there are cases of, like, just how could that benefit players if things were more transparent too?
I think it would benefit a lot. A lot of we joke about this a lot. Every single time a kid goes anywhere, other than the team that got him, every other fan that's salty they didn't get him just immediately yells, "Oh, he got a bag to go there." There's never like a effort to think maybe this was an upgrade for him. Maybe this was the right decision. Maybe this was better off for the player. I think another issue too, and we've seen a lot of this on social media. I could I could create a burner account on Twitter, and I could just tweet, man, Dylan Rail to Oregon for $30 million. And the thing is enough people will buy that all of a sudden, like, that'll start a rumor. And then you will like be at a bar and you will hear somebody like genuinely trash Dylan Rail or Oregon, and they'll quote that and they'll be like, oh, dude, he's getting paid 30 million there. And it's like, okay, like that was, I could start that rumor and it could very easily blow up. So I do think I'm with you. I think it would be helpful for a lot of these kids, because I can almost guarantee, not almost guarantee, I would say the vast majority of kids are getting less in NIL than the public perception. And I think there's probably only a few who are actually getting more than the public perception. But even those kids, that might be like, maybe we think 5 million to come back to Oregon. He got 6. I don't think it would be like anything egregious. Where on the flip side, I do think there are guys where people think that they got 10 million. In reality, they got 1, or they think they got 2. And in reality, they got 200,000. So I do think it would be helpful for players. That's a great point. I didn't think a whole lot about that before you said it.
So before we wrap up, just quick on this topic. Somewhere there where the NCAA clearly got it wrong, but I just don't understand it completely. The Owen Heinecke eligibility case. Owen Heinecke is a linebacker for Oklahoma. He petitioned for a 6th year of eligibility with the university, and he walked on to Ohio State lacrosse in 2021. Played only 15 minutes in 3 total games, but that burned his eligibility as an athlete for that year. So the NCAA essentially denied it. Oklahoma general manager Jim Nagy, he's the Senior Bowl general manager for years. He's been this past year he finally got a college GM job. He came out guns blazing on Twitter yesterday, basically saying like, or on Twitter in general, saying like 7th, 8th years are being granted to so many players around college football right now. And Owen, who's just a really good kid, got into football late, was a walk on, and he's chasing the dream. He wanted a 6th year of eligibility, not because he wanted $2 more million because he's not a NFL player, but he knows he can play in college and get paid in college. He wants a 6th year of eligibility because he's not a developed college football player yet. Theoretically, like, he hasn't had a full college football career. And yes, he technically did burn his eligibility in 2021, but there has to be other ways around this.
Yeah, 15 minutes of walk on lacrosse is not the same as a full season of college football. And yeah, I'm with you. Like, I feel bad for the kid. If he's forced to enter the draft this year, he's probably a 6th or 7th round pick or an undrafted free agent. If he comes back he was a really good player. If he comes back to Oklahoma and puts another year of high quality football on film and a Brent Venables defense, that could change his life. That could be the difference between an undrafted free agent who plays on practice squads and doesn't make it versus a guy who goes in the 2nd or 3rd round and has a chance to actually make a career for himself. And it stinks that like that hinges on 15 minutes of walk on lacrosse at Ohio State. And
Yeah.
we talked about this a little bit before the podcast. It's also really tough because the inconsistency with who gets extra years is frustrating. There just doesn't really seem to be like a fair rhyme or reason. As Jim Nagy had quoted, in his tirade, there's been guys across the country have gotten 7th and 8th years, and not just of eligibility, but like of college football. And their stance was way less ground than what Heinecke had. We've had guys with JUCO, played multiple JUCO years that got, they got clean slate for that. And then on the flip side, I know it's not a college basketball podcast, but it's college. We've seen Amari Bailey, he's a Charlotte Hornets player. He has logged stats in the NBA. It sounds like he might have a chance to come play this year, eligible mid-season to go play basketball at UCLA. We've already saw it with Charles Bediako of Alabama. He was in the G League this year and mid-season somehow got eligibility to just go play for Alabama. I know college basketball, there's a whole John Calipari, Tom Izzo tirades about what's wrong with that. So give those a listen. They're obviously way more well-informed in that space than Farbo and I are here. But I think it's worth noting, like, there's clearly an eligibility issue across NCAA, and it stinks you hear a case like, to hear NBA players get granted eligibility to come back midseason. And then you have Owen Heinecke, who 15 minutes of college lacrosse, like, and that was enough to rule him ineligible. But a season in the NBA to play a year with the Charlotte Hornets and log stats is not. It's just the inconsistency is maddening, and it's just mind blowing too.
It also goes back to what you were saying earlier. Who's advising these kids? If you really thought you were an NBA player, you committed to that. If you really were convinced that you were an NBA player, if you really were convinced that you want to forego the eligibility that you had in college, you already said bye-bye to that. You're committed to starting the next chapter of your career. But now that kids are getting paid $500K by Alabama to go be their point guard or center or whatever. Now you're like, oh shit, I made the wrong decision. Oh, do I have any eligibility left? Okay, now how much money would it cost me to hire a lawyer and an agent to make sure that I don't get completely screwed by both leagues for this? The fact like we're at this point in college athletics is maddening. But I'm pretty confident enough to say this is episode 66 of Flag for Discussion. I know we started out by not knowing if it was 65 or 66. We'll be back next week. We'll make sure we'll have plenty more discussions like this throughout the off season, because it's just the fun conversations, right? Like there's so much about college football that can structure your shows or structure your conversations. Jason and I just went on 3 topics for 50 minutes and didn't really have like a break in them. And this is the fun part. Make sure if you have any comments on what we said today, reach out to us. We're on Twitter at F4Discussion, TikTok at Flag4Discussion. Please comment. We'd love to have your comments on the show. React to them. Maybe you just completely disagree. Maybe you completely agree. But there is space for your comments on here. Make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube at Flag for Discussion, spelled out. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, at Flag for Discussion, spelled out. This has been episode 66. So much on the on all of college football. Quinn Van Horn was our guest on episode 65. That's kind of what I want to do throughout the off season, right, Jace? Like just like have conversations with people, really interesting people throughout the college football landscape. Have these conversations about the bigger things about college football. Try to make ourselves smarter. Bring some fun stuff for the audience. That's what it's all about.
That's what makes the off season fun. It's those kind of conversations. It's harder to talk through a lot of things, right? There's going to be episodes where there's just not a lot in the sport, but that's also an opportunity for, like you said, for us to share our ridiculous thoughts and opinions that play. I know they plague me late at night and I'm just laying there thinking through these things. I know they plague your inbox when I'm sending you voice memos that are 10 minutes long during the workday. And then opportunities like, I mean, not to glaze too much, but Quinn was phenomenal. It was so fun to chat with him. It was nice to catch up with him before we recorded. He's so well-spoken. He does incredible work in the space. And, that's a person that I would have to say most of our listeners don't really think about that side of sports. And they probably don't think about that opportunity that a lot of people have. So it's a cool way for people to get more plugged into sports and to learn a little bit more about not just the football, but what goes on around the football and how do decisions get made? What are people thinking about? So just cool opportunities for us and for our listeners to learn alongside us, which is cool.
Absolutely. Well, keep us in mind. We'll be doing this throughout the offseason. I also think actually one more thing on what you said. I joked throughout the rest of the last couple episodes of the playoff of like we'll come out with our way too early top 25 list, almost mocking it because those are stupid. We don't need to we didn't have rankings we didn't have Flag for Discussion rankings until like week 10. We think those rankings are stupid. I'm sure we'll do a early top 25, top 15, whatever that is. But as of right now, when you don't know the players very well or the coaches very well, you don't know how some of the rosters are going to shape out, trouble yourself with that. It's just for clicks that people do online. But we're going to have real conversations throughout the offseason. Make sure you're tuned in with us. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. For myself, Farbod Merkazi, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, this has been Flag for Discussion.